exactly were you doing?
When I got to Korea, I was assigned to a tactical control squadron, and was assigned to the control center at the 314th Air Division. And basically, I was monitoring air activity over North Korea and South Korea, and we would scramble fighters in case the North Korean Air Force came down, or the Chinese or Russian Air Force came down, and we'd scramble, which means we would tell the fighters get up in the air and be prepared for combat, and we would monitor that activity. And then that would last for about an hour or two because, they'd run out of fuel. They can't stay in the air too long. And then even the North Koreans would have to go back to the base, and our remaining would go back to the base also. And it was like that every day, a challenge every day. And I did that for like 3 months. And the control room consisted of a big plexiglass board where somebody stood behind it and wrote backwards so you could see the progress of the fighters and your own aircraft. And in that control room they had generals and colonels, lieutenants, and enlisted men that, worked on the plan of action, but the generals always made the call when to do what and when to do it, So after about 3 months of that, I was reassigned to train the Korean military, Air Force military, to take over my job, and it's called the KMAG, a Korean Military Assistance Group. So I did that for about 7 or 8 months, and that was interesting because, as I said, each side had limited knowledge of their language, and but we had two of the Korean lieutenants that were trained in the United States that could speak English fluently, and anytime I had a difficulty, they would explain what I was saying to the students. I had about maybe 15 students for that period of time. And occasionally I would leave Osan K-55 and go to outlying radar installations to check on the training of their individuals, because one of my other collateral jobs was to ensure that everybody is up to speed on tactics. And so I would do that maybe once every 2 months for about 3 days a time, go to different facilities out around Korea. But when my time came, I didn't mention anything about the Hungarian revolt.
Yeah, that happened in the beginning of your term.
Yes, shortly after I got to Korea, the Hungarian revolt occurred in October of 1956. And, of course, I went into the Air Force to avoid the Army. And I wasn't planning on having a rifle and bullets. But the Army was going to be sent north, and they told us in no uncertain terms that we're on our own. So we're all issued weapons. And you asked about humorous incidents. Yes, Bob Hope had come to Korea on Christmas time,
Oh, yeah.
and we're still on alert. And we had a big auditorium that they put on a little show for us. And we all carried our weapons, and we're not supposed to have any bullets in those weapons, especially indoors. But every once in a while, somebody would slam the butt of the rifle on the floor, and a bullet would discharge and go through the roof. That happened twice when I was there. So, we were Air Force. They should have known better than to give us weapons anyway, especially bullets. But that's kind of was a humorous incident. They didn't think so, but I thought it was rather strange. But we made our own fun, just like, I was 17 when I went in, but I was 19 when I got to Korea. But I was still kind of simple-minded, and looking for fun. And we made our own fun. I did some travel to Seoul and around the local area with the 2 or 3 other fellows, just to see what's going on. But I had given you some pictures which was kind of depressing when you compare Osan at the time and Osan today. And I was mentioning to you when I went on the internet to look at Osan, I said there's no sense in me going there because I wouldn't recognize anything anyway. But it was like 10-story high buildings, and you might as well go to Rochester, New Hampshire. I would say Manchester. Probably Osan is as big as Manchester, I'm sure. Anyway, my tour of duty was uneventful other than those occasions like the Hungarian Revolt, and I was very anxious to get back to the States. And when I got back, I was discharged out of Parks Air Force Base in California. And I do remember getting off the plane and kissing the ground. It was, I guess, a kind of tradition, you know. One other humorous incident, we were in Korea for a year, and I had been in New Mexico for 2.5 years, and I kind of missed the environment I lived in. But I remember when we were coming back from Korea, we went to Japan, and then we came back on Flying Tigers, which had white women, female stewardesses, which I hadn't seen for a year. And I remember I never slept. I just kept watching them, Now, that's a 17-hour flight. But we made stops in Wake Island and Hawaii and all that, too, But when I came back, it was just, I was so glad to get back to the United States. I had to kiss the ground at the Air Force Base, Travis Air Force Base.
Yeah. So, can you talk about the time that you saw Sigmund Rhee drive through the town?
Yes, a friend of mine and I were up in Suwon, which is about 30 miles north of Osan. We would commandeer a 6x, from the motor pool and take off. And we were just walking around, and all of a sudden I noticed the people gathering along this dirt road, which is the main road from Seoul to Osan anyway. And there was a military jeep coming down, and sure enough, there was Sigmund Rhee in a Cadillac about, 100 yards behind, and another 100 yards behind him was another military jeep, to protect them. But we saluted him because we were supposed to recognize his authority. And he passed by. And ultimately went up to Seoul also. And one of the interesting events they had in Seoul, that same friend of mine and I went into the Capitol building, which was basically all bombed out. It still had the dome, but to get up to the dome, there was a walkway that kind of swung around the dome because it's curved, but it was hanging there. But we got up on the second floor and we shimmied up the wall and grabbed onto that rail, and it was swaying. But we both went up to the dome where there was pillars, and we took pictures of ourselves up there. And coming down, we'll come down one at a time. We got smart. Instead of being two of us on that rack, we came down one at a time, and we made it, obviously. Yeah. But, youth knows no bounds, knows no danger.
Yeah. Do you remember any particular students that you were training, the Korean students, the last 7 months of your duty?
Do I remember any of the what?
Do you remember anyone in particular from when you were training the Koreans?
Of the Korean military? No. It seemed like everybody was named Park or Soo and Son, and it was very difficult for me to really get friendly with them, because I couldn't speak their language. And even our little houseboy, I can't remember his name either, but I saw him on a daily basis. But, he was a busy little fella, doing things for everybody, and I suppose I just accepted that, But an interesting story, too. I had made staff sergeant, so I couldn't eat at the airmen's chow hall. I call it chow hall, mess hall. But I would take my jacket with the stripes off and put on another jacket that didn't have any stripes, and I'd go with my friends to eat there, Because when I went to the NCO, mess. I didn't know anybody, you know. But I went there a few times, and what an interesting thing. I don't know if you realize it, but the Korean women would try to westernize their look, and they would have their eyes cut so that they wouldn't squint, you know. And every once in a while, you'd see the girl with a bandage on one eye, and then a week later, you'd see her with the bandage on the other eye. And I said, "What's going on?" I didn't realize what they were doing, you know. Oh, they're having their eyes fixed so that they don't have this look, you know. But I thought that was kind of silly, but, you know, they wanted to be like westernized, you know. But those are things you learn, you know.